So today's video is all about branding and branding strategies. You've learned a lot about branding in a lot of your classes over your tenure here at St. John Fisher College. You've had probably about 5 classes, and every single class, I'm sure, every single marketing class, I'm sure, talked about branding. What I'm going to try to do in this video lecture is I'm going to try to talk to you about the strategy behind branding, how to drive brand equity, how to drive brand mantra, how to drive more revenue through driving brands. So we're going to talk about family brands, and we're going to talk about individual brands. We're going to talk about brand equity and what drives brand equity. We're going to talk about customers. We're going to talk about lifetime value analysis, all as it has to deal with brands. So I hope you enjoy it. And again, some of it might be review because you've had it before, and some of it might be new to you. So with that, let's start the video and let's go right into branding. So as I said in the introduction, this chapter is all about creating brand equity and driving growth. So the American Marketing Association says that a brand is a term, a name, a symbol, or a combination of thereof to identify goods and products. A brand can be a different combination of words, music. It could be just about anything. Look at Nike. Nike with the swoosh and the tagline, "Just Do It," is part of their brand. If you look at MGM, their brand symbol or their brand is the lion that roars at the beginning of the movies. A brand could be a name like Audi or Chevrolet, or a brand could be a subset like Lexus is a subset of Toyota. What a brand does is it differentiates products from other products in the seller's mind. Now, the role of brands for consumers, it reduces risk because you bought it before and you know about it. I look at different hotel chains, different restaurant chains, etc. The brand helps reduce the risk and simplify decision making. Brands take on a personal meaning. Just do it means get out there, exercise, be athletic. It becomes part of the identity of the company. Look at Procter & Gamble. The identity of their whole business is the different brands, and that's Tide and Cheer. And look at Unilever. Their brand is defined by Dove. And they also can take on human-like characteristics. For a firm, it simplifies product handlings because you can put all brands together. It organizes and helps with distribution because you can put different brands in different warehouses. You have different brands for different customers. It also offers legal protections because of trademarks and other things like that. And it helps develop loyalty to your customer base so they can come back and continue to purchase from you. And it also helps you to define and establish a competitive advantage. And we've talked about competitive advantage in this class before, and we've talked about competitive advantage quite a few times throughout the different semesters, and I know that you've had it in principles and other marketing classes that you've told. So branding then, if you take a look at a brand as a thing, it can be physical, it can be intellectual, it can be a noise, it can be a sound, it could be anything. Branding is the process of taking products and associating that brand with those products. Nike, whenever anybody takes a look at brands, they look at Nike. And Nike associates every single product that they make with their brand. Anywhere from hats to outerwear to workout clothes and shorts and socks and shoes and even sporting equipment is all associated with their brand. However, other companies do not do that, and I always use Procter & Gamble as an example. Procter & Gamble, their brand is not associated with a specific product. They don't have Procter & Gamble detergent, they have Tide detergent. They don't have Procter & Gamble dishwashing liquid. They have not Dove, but Joy dishwashing liquid. So those are really products associated with different brands, and not every product that they sell is associated with the Procter & Gamble brand. So it's really two ways of branding. So the scope of branding can be all of the products that someone makes, like in the case of Nike. It can be some products that the company makes. Look at Coke. Coke has a brand with Diet Coke and Cherry Coke and Vanilla Coke and all those types of things. But they also own vitamin waters. They also own a lot of other products that are not under the Coca-Cola brand. Same thing with PepsiCo. And you can look at, say, GM. GM has its own brand, but it also has sub-brands like Chevrolet, Cadillac. I think Pontiac is part of GM and some of the other ones. So depending on how you want to do it, the process of branding is really endowing the products or different products and services with a brand. If you look at a hotel chain, Marriott, their brand is all about the service that they provide to that. So brand equity then is how much a brand is worth. And so it's the value that consumers place on a different brand. Now, that is really kind of out there, because brand equity is a moving target and nobody knows exactly how much a brand is worth. For instance, the number one brand in the world is Apple. It's worth, hundreds of billions of dollars, and you can look it up on the internet. And I know that in promotions class, those of you who've taken my promotion class, we've done that. But really, it's really an estimation of how much that brand is worth. Now, it's not what the company's worth. That's a whole different thing, because Apple, their market capitalization is worth over $1 trillion, and their brand is worth, I think, 200 billion or something like that. But it's how much someone would pay for that brand. And marketing advantage of a strong brand is improved perceptions, loyalty, distribution. When Nike brings out a new product, they immediately get distributions just because of their brand. When Procter & Gamble comes out with a new product, or Coke comes out with lemon lime Coke, they came out with a vanilla orange Coke. I'm not sure if that lasted, but they immediately get distribution because of their brand. They're less vulnerable to marketing crises. All of these things that you see in front of you in the screen are all different advantages of strong brands. Brand equity takes all of those into consideration. And brand equity, if you really, really want to understand what it would be how much would someone pay for the brand alone. At one point in time, when Xerox had a lot of problems within their company, their brand, that Xerox brand, was worth more than the company itself. That's very rare, but the brand was, I'm going to make up figures and I don't know what it was at that point in time, but let's say the brand was $50 million, the brand equity was $50 million, and the market capitalization of the company was somewhere around $30 million. Now, I know that those are really low figures, but I just use those figures as a comparison or as an example. So defining brand equity is based on customers. Customer loyalty, it's based on the differential effect a brand has on customers. It's based on customer response to those brands, and it's based on the brand promise. Nike has a promise of athletic wear, high quality athletic wear, etc. That is the brand promise. So the brand promise actually includes differences in consumer response. When Walmart, Great Value, comes out with a brand, the customers experience or expect one thing. When a high-end product comes out, it's a whole different story. Brand equity is also based on brand knowledge of the customer. I don't think you can go to any corner of the globe and have someone not recognize Coca-Cola or Disney. And then it also has to deal with perceptions. The stronger the perception, the higher the quality, the higher the brand equity is. Even though Walmart is one of the largest retailers in the world, if not, I think they are the largest brick and mortar retailer in the world, their brand equity is low because their brand promise and the perception of their brand is low. It's on the low end. Whereas if you look at Apple, even though Apple is not the number one cell phone manufacturer in the world, I think they've got 14% market share. Even though they're not, they still have the highest brand equity because of the brand promise. So brand equity models out there, you can look these up in the book there, and I'm not going to go into them. There's really three: the brand asset valuator, the brand dynamics by Brandt's, and the brand renaissance model. I've taken out those slides from here. If you want to really look at it, look it up in the book. Again, brand equity is more of a moving target. These are just three different models of figuring out brand equity. So how do you build brand equity within a company? The identity choices, the accompanying marketing plans, and other associations all help build brand equity. A brand element or an identity of a brand. When someone looks at a brand, they take a look at the products, they take a look at the identity of those products. For instance, Cadillac, very high-end brand within General Motors. And if you look at, say, Chevy or Pontiac, a lower-end brand within General Motors. And then you've got different products within that brand. Different accompanying marketing tactics also help with brand. If, in fact, you look at Google, you look at Apple, they're all about innovation. Innovation always drives higher brand equity. So that helps build brand equity. They're always coming out with new products, innovative products. The Apple Watch, Apple TV, all of these are very innovative products. It helps build brand equity. Consumers, investors all look at that for building brand equity. And then finally, other associations. And the last one would be their marketing plan, the press releases that go on, what the public thinks about it, what the press thinks about it, how they associate. And it might even be associating an athletic star. For instance, Nike associated itself with Michael Jordan for many, many years. And Nike is always associating itself with high-end and top-of-their-game athletes. And that also helps build brand equity. So the other things that really help build brand equity are different things and different criteria for your brand. Oftentimes, brands have multiple criteria. For instance, brand being transferable. Nike, the swoosh is very transferable, and they license it to different products throughout the world. The swoosh is very transferable to different products and different industries. Adaptable, adapting different products to the brand, such as Campbell's. Campbell's can adapt their soups. They can adapt all types of different food products to that particular brand, and the brand carries a strong meaning. Protectable, it has to be able to be copyright written and trademarked. Memorable brands such as Google, Apple, meaningful brands such as GM, General Motors, etc. And then finally, likable brands. If your brand's not likable, for instance, Walmart, a very unlikable brand out there. Now, as we've talked about, Walmart does serve a purpose. You know, it caters to low income, and their target market is low income people. But for the most part, people don't like to shop there. It's not a very likable brand, yet even though it's not likable, it still has a place in what we would call the brand society. So brand context is any information bearing or experience that the consumers have with a brand. That could include advertising, it could include buying a product, it could be sponsoring different events like a NASCAR event or another sporting event. It can be just about anything, and we call that brand contact. The more an organization can get brand contact with its consumer or target market, the better off they're going to be. And you see a lot of different brands out there like Apple and Nike and those types of things that are sponsoring different things, lots of advertising, lots of social media out there to try to drive brand contact to their organization, which also helps build brand equity like we've talked about in the past. So here's a chart. It's pretty complex, and I'm not going to go over this chart, but here's a pretty chart that talks about leveraging not only your brand, but secondary brands out there, even competitive brands. Hyundai does a great job of leveraging a competitive brand because Hyundai is always comparing themselves to Lexus. They're saying we have the same features and benefits of Lexus, yet we're $30,000 to $40,000 lower than Lexus. So they're leveraging secondary associations, even if it's a competitive brand, and they're doing it very successfully. Whereas other people will leverage secondary associations when it's a complementary brand. A really good example with that would be, say, Microsoft and Intel. Microsoft always leverages the power of Intel and vice versa. Intel leverages the power of Microsoft in order to both build brand awareness and brand equity by leveraging secondary associations. So you can see there it could be ingredients, it could be alliances, companies, extensions, all types of different things to help leverage secondary associations to build brand equity. Again, one of the key things that we're trying to do here is build brand equity. Look at Apple, $244 billion for the brand. Now, the market capitalization for Apple, as we talked about before, is over $1 trillion. But their brand alone, just their brand, is $244 billion. The next closest would be Google at $155 billion. So they're looking at almost $90 billion more than their second closest competitor. And that's because of their associations that they're leveraging, their brand mantra throughout the world is driving brand equity. So internal branding is also part. Google does a real good job of internal branding, which is making sure that employees are aware of their brand, making sure employees are happy. If you want a local excellence for internal branding, that would be Wegmans. Wegmans is always on the top 100 of employee happiness and employee satisfaction. They really leverage that internal brand, and then that internal brand leverage helps to translate, if you will, to customers, to consumers, and it drives revenue, it drives brands. Truly, Wegmans is local excellence. Actually, you would almost call them regional excellence now since their footprint is extending into the Carolinas. But that is a way of driving brand equity and driving external brand awareness through internal brand building. So how do you measure brand equity? Well, through brand audits, through brand tracking studies, and brand valuation. But if you really want to think about it, the rubber meets the road with revenue. You want to measure your brand equity with revenue. If you're driving brand equity, but it's not translating to revenue, then you're really missing the boat. Remember, marketing is one of the only, no, I wouldn't say one of, marketing is the only functional excellence that drives revenue. We are revenue drivers, and that's what we do. So if we're building brand equity, but we're not driving revenue into the organization and profitability into the organization, then we need to concentrate on doing other things. So you got brand audits, you got brand tracking studies, you got brand valuation, all those types of things are measuring equity, but remember, it absolutely has to translate into revenue or we're doing the wrong thing. So you've got brand reinforcement. That would be Nike is always reinforcing their brands, always moving forward. They're bringing out new products. They're expanding their product lines. They're contracting their product lines. Nike just stopped making golf equipment because they weren't profitable with that. Google is also doing a great job of brand reinforcement with the different Google Play and the different Google, their streaming, Google TV, and some of their other businesses out there. Brand revitalization, I call it brand rejuvenation. Kotler calls it brand revitalization. We're saying the same thing. Most textbooks you'll find it being called brand rejuvenation and not brand revitalization. And that's when you're trying to drive
different lifeblood into your brand. Buick is the best example I can think of, where they've really rejuvenated their brand, taking it from an old man's company to a younger millennial-based type or young Xer company. Legos is another one I always use for brand rejuvenation, and others that way. So now we get to devising a brand strategy. There's really three things that you can do. You can develop new products. You can apply some existing brand elements to devising your strategy, or you can use a combination of both. If you want to rejuvenate your brand, you want to enhance your brand, the best way to do that is to develop new products or be innovative. Something like we talked about Buick and their brand rejuvenation. And that was done because of new product development and innovative new products to go with the existing brand. I look at Under Armour. They built a brand empire really by getting the contract with the NFL for really what you would call as long johns or underwear, long underwear. They got that product contract, and then they enhanced those products with other products, and now they're a strong athletic brand. You can apply some existing brand elements to the strategy and then devise some other ones, like the way people think about you, some of the press releases, etc., that you have in the newspaper or in the media. Or you can use a combination of both. And to tell you the truth, most people use a combination of both. So, new product branding, you can do brand extensions, like Black & Decker, where they started with power tools, and then they did a brand extension into the home appliances. You can sub-brand, much like the Gap did with Old Navy. You can have a parent brand, and then things under the parent brand, like PepsiCo is a parent brand, and they just came out with, say, Buble. You can have a master or a family brand like Campbell's Soup. We talked about that. You can have line extensions, category extensions. All these different things are new products or ways of new products to enhance or develop a brand. Other alternative branding strategies is to have an individual or separate brand names. That's Procter & Gamble with regards to Tide and Cheer. Unilever does the same thing. Unilever is one big brand, yet you don't see Unilever soap. It's Dove soap. It's a brand under a brand. So they have separate family brand names for a huge umbrella company. You can have a corporate umbrella or a company brand name, Apple. Most people do that. Apple or Nike can do that. And then, of course, you've got sub-brand names, and the best way I can think about that would be Chevrolet is a sub-brand of General Motors, and under Chevrolet, you've got a multitude of different vehicles like the Cruze, the Malibu, the Impala, the Volt, the Corvette, a lot of those different types of cars under a sub-brand name. Some branding decisions, you could have a house of brands like Procter & Gamble. Or you could have a branded house or a flagship product. Let's see, a flagship product with other products below that. I would say Coca-Cola would be a kind of a branded house with a flagship product of being Coke, and then a lot of products underneath that to help that. Your brand portfolios, you could have flanker brands. Flanker brands are brands that are not necessarily in competition with the current brand, but other brands like that. For instance, let's see, a flanker brand would be, say, well, I guess Coke, and then a flanker brand would be Diet Coke. You've got low-end entry-level brands. That would be Old Navy, with a lower end to the Gap and their entry-level brands. You've got cash cow brands, those brands that are really driving the company forward, like search engine optimization with Google. Or you have high-end prestige brands, and that would be Cadillac, part of the Cadillac brand of General Motors. Brand extensions is introducing a host of new products under a firm's strongest brand names. Again, the best one for brand extension would be Black & Decker. Black & Decker was very strong in power tools and now they're strong not only in power tools but also kitchen appliances. It's improved odds of new product success and all these things that you see in the box there. However, there is a risk of brand dilution. If you get into too many products, the brand actually loses its identity. That's why, because somebody like Unilever or Procter & Gamble have so many brands, they're afraid of brand dilution, so each one had its own separate individual brand so that they wouldn't have brand dilution. So that's part of that also. Customer equity. We've talked about this before. This is what I would call lifetime value analysis, LVA, which is how much is a customer worth over the lifetime of that customer. I use the example of Ford. If you're 20 years old, you buy your first Ford, and you like Ford, you're probably going to be buying a Ford every 4 or 5 years for the rest of your life. You're going to live to your 100, so that means that you're going to live another 80 years. You're going to really have, say, buy another 20 cars at an average price of, say, $70,000 a car. You're worth $1.4 million to Ford if they can keep you. That's what's called customer equity. That's why CRM, customer relationship management, is so important with regards to building customer equity and lifetime of value analysis. The stronger the brand is, the more sought after the brand is, the easier it is to do customer CRM or customer relationship management. And in addition to that, the more customer equity you're going to have. So some growth strategies: building market share, developing committed customers, all these types of things, building a powerful brand, Nike, building a brand name, building a brand experiences, like Marriott. If you've seen the latest Marriott commercial, they used that song from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, "Come with me and you'll see." And they're talking about a brand experience. Outstanding reputation for social responsibility. You look at Accenture, HP, M&M Mars, or partnering with other businesses, acquisitions, mergers, and those types of things. So growing your core business, make the core brand as distinctive as possible. No one's better at that than Nike. Reebok does a nice job of that also. Distribution through both existing and new channels. Apple does that because they have their own distribution network. Apple is sold at their own Apple stores, but they're also still sold at Verizon stores and other types of that. So they're driving distribution through existing, but also developing new channels. And then offering the core in new product versions or new formats or new other versions. Most of your household products and consumer products will do that. Just look at, say, Coke or Pepsi. They've got cans, they've got bottles, they've got all kinds of different formats and different versions of their classic Coca-Cola. So that is going to conclude this video lecture for Chapter 8. Please make sure you study this for the upcoming test coming up in a couple of weeks. And until then, I will see you in class.